It's a Tuesday here on Stochastic, and you know what that means. Time to hop into another best ball draft. Right now, we're putting together teams that are going to not reach their real paydays until the end of 2025. But, of course, the edge is there when you are paying attention to the world of NFL. OTAs going on right now, the organized team activities, give us little trickles of news that we can have an advantage of some of these draft rooms. And, of course, the big thing is that we're competing for a prize pool of $15 million on DraftKings. $2 million, which go to first place. Top 10 finishers win $100K. So we're already in the draft room. Let's get into it. Let's catch up on some of the news here. Of course, it's been a few days since our last one, doing these every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. And you guys know what I always like to lead off these videos with. In addition to shilling for DraftKings, a great platform here supporting us doing these streams on a Stochastic channel. But 3 rules of best ball, really things to always try to adhere to, abide by when you're doing a draft. Number 1, being mindful of average draft position. Guys go up, guys go down, being aware of where those guys are priced. And more than anything, being tethered to what you see on this part of the board. I want to go over here, ADP. Basically, you don't want to go reaching for guys here. You don't want to take a player that's normally got a 20 ADP when you're picking in the 5 hole like I am. You want to absorb value along the way as well. That's what really should make your teams the most unique. If you got Bijan Robinson somehow at pick 10, you're probably one of very few teams that has it over the course of an entire summer of drafting. So average draft position, ADP, your number 1 rule of thumb to have, no matter what best ball draft, no matter what site you're drafting on. Number 2, stacking and correlation. You're trying to stack your QBs with your wide receivers, tight ends, even running backs more than you would a normal DFS slate. And we got Bijan Robinson here at pick 5. Not a rule of thumb, but certainly a player that I think is one guy you could build around this year. A player who last year, positive EPAs, expected points added, the metric that I swear by from Sports Info Solutions, which tells you how players do relative to average in most situations. Positive EPA in the run game, positive EPA in the pass game, good red zone work as well for Bijan Robinson last year. These are the players to me that I look for the most. Young guys on the upswing, guys as well who have the potential to build on what they did last year, or, in the case of Bijan, really had one of the better roles in football last year between the red zone work and the fact as well that he was out there basically to be a player that they could have out there in running situations and passing situations. And you can still get results from him in either situation there. When they're ahead, when the Falcons are ahead, you get more Tyler Algier in the mix. Bijan's ability to be kind of that diverse option as well, and the fact that he got targeted a good amount, I really think that stood out to me as being guys to watch out for, and hopefully year 3 for him making another leap upwards. We got pick 5 here again, so we got a few picks before we come up. Shout out to our guy Chunk in the chat. Appreciate seeing him here. Appreciate all you guys watching live or after the fact as well. And if you can, hit that like button, subscribe. Of course, Stochastic is primarily a DFS channel, but of course, trying to do some more best ball this year because best ball is a big thing, especially on DraftKings, where this year there's a big effort to get people in. Some happy hour deals going on there to get some more entries going. They have some other deals going now, too, that I saw in the app, but now have escaped me. There's always little flash deals they have going for DraftKings this year in terms of their best ball stuff. So keep an eye on there if you have your DFS money. And this time of year, especially where we don't have NBA going right now, at least until the finals kick up in a couple of days. MLB, obviously, you're going to play a good amount of slates with the cheaper tournaments up top there, but you might not want to play MLB every day. I think NFL best ball, a good way to get some entries in and get yourself a shot at bigger prizes than you would have some other formats. Again, that $2 million up top, you don't find that very often in most DFS formats. The flip side is that they have to hold your money for a couple months, but that's best ball for you. We got a pick coming up here. You can see a frothy little RB run, at least for this guy here with Genty and Achane. Certainly, when you are taking the 2 RBs early, you got to make sure to hit wide receiver hard after that. And I'm open to taking 2 wide receivers here. Or 2 RBs here. I do like the combination of Bijan and Bucky Irving. I've mentioned that's one of my favorite pairings to get in a draft. When it aligns for me in these draft pockets, I'm willing to do it. And I have no issue with A.J. Brown either. Faintest bit of a discount for him at a 19.9 ADP and us at pick 20. But I'm going to go Bucky Irving here. I think this is a good spot on really every platform to hit wide receiver hard for our next 5 rounds or so, dig out of our hole that we're going to put ourselves into by taking 2 RBs early on. This has been a change in strategy for me this year, where I really do believe in the power of 0 RB, especially in basketball formats in years past. Certainly possible it could hit again this year. But with how ADPs aligned, for the most part, like the field has also sharpened up on, not bumping your Joe Mixon's round 2. I think Joe Mixon's a good click in round 5. You can get him if even later than that would be great. But he's the kind of player in the past would be probably a first-round pick, second-round pick. In the last couple of years, the ADPs have sharpened up, where you have some vets up here, your Saquons, your McCaffreys, your Derrick Henrys. Those are your older guys that are going to be going with a high ADP. But really for them, the role's pretty secure. McCaffrey, maybe a little bit less so with how he played last year, but new offensive coordinator there with Clay Kubiak, not Click Kubiak, who's easy to mix up the 2 brothers in the NFC West. But hope there would be that you get McCaffrey getting back to that 5 red zone touches a game role, 20 overall touches a game. I'm not sold on that, but even your old guys, though, point being, like the old guys are now priced appropriately, still where they should be. And the guys who are old and maybe not as good, I think also priced appropriately in this kind of modern landscape. We need to get to receiver. If there were an elite tight end, I would have considered it. But I'm going to go Marvin Harrison here, first receiver off the board. Harrison, not the most impressive last year in terms of what people expected coming in, where he was going at the 1-2 turn last year. Certainly underperformed that overall. Trey McBride being great, the offense not being terribly explosive. Two things that certainly didn't help him out too much last year. But Harrison put on some size for a guy that's not going to create a ton of separation, it seems, based on year one. Good to see him be able to actually hopefully box guys out a little bit more to get the kind of targets that he needs to get. But for Harrison, for me, the main thing is that he's here in this ADP right now. Know the receivers, I think, speak to me as the potential to be a wide receiver one. Harrison still has the potential, even though obviously the first run for him was not the best. Guy here going 3 RBs in a row, going to be a little bit tough for him to dig out. You got to get receiver in at some point. Certainly at this point, if you're taking 3 RBs in the first 3 rounds, you're thinking more of a hyper fragile build, which is when you want to have maybe those are your only 3 RBs. You add 1 on later on. But really, even a 20-round draft, it's a lot of capital spend at RB that you have to dig out of because you want elite players at every position if you can get them. Caught an RB Piggy red-handed. Yes, I don't have my RB Piggy gift that I have on my Splash Play channel, which we'll be doing another draft on after this one as well. If you want to stay tuned for more PPR drafting goodness for me in a different format, total points format I'll be doing on my channel. But yeah, I look, RB Piggying is really hard to avoid this year. I think in particular, when I had that shot at Bijan Bucky, I would say Saquon Bucky as well. I think that to me feels like a really dynamic 1-2 punch that I can hit. I get to people who want to do the start here that RC Costa did with McCaffrey and Henry. Certainly 2 veteran names. This guy drafting a team that feels like all the hits of 2019. But still, like these guys all have still good roles in McCaffrey, Henry, Devontae Adams. I just personally think the Bijan Bucky combo, getting Bucky, a guy who put up 1,500 yards last year when he didn't really want to give him the role, and then he just earned it and they couldn't keep him off the field. Hard to not like that guy in year 2 with an offense that should keep a lot of the same principles despite the offensive coordinator situation changing over there. Liam Cohen moving on. Good shit specs. Thank you for that. Of course, the vintage hashtag that we've had before in the Deposit Kingdom, our friend Pete Overzet's channels on Discord. But yeah, look, I feel like I've been putting on some good stream drafts lately. So I think my stochastic drafts, candidly, on DraftKings have been the weakest I've been streaming so far. Where my underdog streams, I feel like my team's been good. My drafters team's been really good lately, soaking up some nice value, putting together good stuff. My DraftKings teams, I just feel like sometimes the temptation is to soak up value, and sometimes it kind of throws me off the beaten path, what I'm trying to accomplish. But that's where ADP, I guess, even though it is one of the most important rules of thumb in best ball, sometimes can be a little bit of a, a little bit of a chamber that you trap yourself into where you're just always soaking up value and kind of deviate from what you want to do structure-wise. James Cook, still got I'm not comfortable clicking right now just because of the fact I think that holdout lands for a while, and we've already got 2 RBs in anyway. I like Travis Hunter, but taking him a good amount on DraftKings. I do like Ted McMillan as well. And it's odd to me that Ted McMillan is priced pick 48 ADP-wise on DraftKings, a PPR site, whereas on the half PPR sites out there, he's priced high 30s. I think that kind of speaks as well to maybe some of the inefficiencies of DraftKings drafters, where there are sometimes some players that, they're a rookie, people don't have the biggest faith in the team or whatever reason. Those players don't gain as much of an ADP on them as they do on sites, let's say like Underdog, where there is a good amount of sharp drafters who are willing to take shots just for that upside of a young player. Ted McMillan is one of those guys where I would hope he comes up over the course of a summer. And the fact that he's already playing wide receiver 1 work as your outside X receiver, like he's being used the way you expect him to, is with the guy who has a draft capital coming in that he has. But I expect Bryce Young to make a leap this year. Thought he flashed well in the home stretch, even though the beginning of the year certainly left something to be desired. For McMillan, he's one of my favorite clicks right now, even though I'm perfectly happy to get Hunter. Cortland Sutton, I don't really have an issue with. But I think McMillan's a little bit undervalued on DraftKings. Almost did K-Rex start and couldn't do it and picked Adams instead. Maybe he'll take 1 more RB in the 150s. Maybe not. The start here with Gibbs, Taylor, and Brown. I mean, look, again, taking Joe Burrow on top of that, it's not the best drafting. We've talked about this before on stream, and people get offended by it. Like, there are people that find these streams and then, don't want to be criticized. And I'm sorry if that's the case. I've honestly thought about should just block out names on stream so you can't see who people are so they don't get offended. But like these kind of teams where you throw 3 RBs, QB after it, you're going to be so far behind at wide receiver that you're putting yourself in a spot where you're basically possibly a dead team from the jump. Trying to avoid those kind of draft structures, really is a very important part of the process. We got a little bit of a value on Devontae Smith here. And we are just trying to line up some receivers. I like Zay Flowers a good amount as well. Him making a leap in year 3 for himself after being, I would say, not the best run out in touchdowns last year. But I'll take the value here in Devontae Smith. About a 6 ADP difference between him and Zay Flowers. I view them similarly. I would say Zay Flowers, if he were to come up again to the high 30s like he was last year, low 40s, I would be perfectly happy to take him there. Like Zay Flowers a lot, but Devontae Smith is the pick. You've got Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving. Again, RB heavy start, but we hopefully can keep hitting receiver pretty well, because I think that's one of the benefits when you are picking the spot where you can get Bijan and Bucky together. We got Marvin Harrison, Ted McMillan, Devontae Smith. Definitely not your Jefferson Chase tier of stud receiver, and I would say not even your second tier either. Your neighbors, kind of Brian Thomas kind of guys. But I'd say the third tier of potential alpha outside receivers, and Devontae Smith is a little bit of both. So I'm cool with this build so far. I think we have to keep hitting receiver hard, though, because that's the whole point of the game again. It seems like this guy is finally taking receiver. DK Metcalf, whenever you get a share of that Arthur Smith offense, you got to do it. Does seem like, by the way, early reports were coming out about Miami, maybe moving on from Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith asked for more money after the big year he had, and then Pittsburgh really wanted him. But Pittsburgh, after reports came out today, seems like they're not going to be able to get the Jonnu Smith trade done for themselves, even though they're looking for a playmaker after trading away George Pickens. So the Jonnu Smith thing seemed like they're not there. And I guess Jonnu Smith willing to play with less money on the table in Miami than get traded and maybe get slightly more money. But Pittsburgh apparently didn't want to pay for the big contract and the draft capital you have to give up to actually acquire Jonnu. So those are the most recent reports there. Jonnu Smith's still falling in rooms, though, so you can take shots on him if you want. But probably makes DK Metcalf, fractionally undervalued. But the fact they want to get another playmaker in, I don't know who they're going to get in. They brought in Gabe Davis for a meeting with the team. Not really the kind of player that's going to upset DK Metcalf's outlay too much. But somebody can come in and maybe make it harder for DK Metcalf like Pickens would have. I forgot to hit our third rule of thumb, by the way, up top, and I should make sure to hit that first and foremost. I do want to establish for all of our DFS friends coming in that have some money on DraftKings, they want to gamble on something different. I want to try to give you guys the best practice here, like Stochastic always tries to do in the content they have. But the third rule of thumb here, and really is an important one that sometimes people miss a lot, especially when it comes down to having teams that can survive in a tournament, especially on DraftKings where your finals about 1,000 people, which is 2x the size some of the other big tournaments out there. Your expected value is realized in week 17. Everything's paid out then. Advance rate is an important part of the equation. The advance rate by less sharp players gets really overhyped, especially some of the guys on Twitter who just post about best ball all day but don't really understand it. They just know that they got kind of lucky on a few players last year. They don't really grasp like the things that go into it every year. Advance rate's an important part of the equation, but building teams to advance as opposed to having teams that are well structured for week 17 is a really key important part there of best ball. A lot of people miss, and they're surprised why they don't get the results that they thought they would get because they don't build that way. But that includes stacking week 17 games if you can, but really mostly having teams that come together in a meaningful way, having stacking and correlation for teams that excel throughout the entire season and then pop off in week 17 is sort of the goal. We got Chris Godwin here, who I'm comfortable taking. And DraftKings rooms, those we've talked about a lot in here. Sometimes people will punt these guys around with a Q tag on their name just because they don't understand that a Q tag doesn't matter at all. We're drafting right now in the first week of June. But Juwan Jennings is a guy that I like a lot, so I'll just say that out loud here. I also have to open my Excel sheet because closed earlier for an update. But Juwan Jennings, to me, had quietly one of the most impressive analytics seasons last year. The target earning for him went up a good amount as I try to pull up these numbers. Of course, I have to sort by value, not formulas in Excel. But Juwan Jennings, a 0.3 EPA per target last year, 29% target per out run rate. He dominated the target share. And obviously, Ayuk had his kind of false start after his new contract. But really, the big numbers that I look for are all there for him. He also had 1.1 red zone targets a game, 0.7 deep targets a game, good for a 0.5 EPA on that, which is solid, could be better. But Juwan Jennings, I think, kind of established himself last year. If he comes down to earth a little bit and, let's say Brandon Ayuk claims some more. Ricky Pearsall, I don't think will ever be a huge target earner per route, but he should be more productive overall for himself. If those guys claim a little bit, there's still room for Juwan Jennings to be really productive at this ADP and have big upside. So I think for Juwan Jennings, one of those guys in this range, I think he's undervalued with how he played last year. I get people not wanting to buy in. Last year, I would have thought it was a bad pick on him because you had Pearsall coming in. You had Ayuk with the big money. Debo's still there. But now Debo's gone. Jennings proved himself for an entire season. I think he's a player that I feel really comfortable about as your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, things like that. Now that John wasn't leaving DK to the moon. Yeah, still not DK to the moon, I would think, but definitely looks like a better pick than he was. And as we talked about before, Chris Godwin, I felt like if we pushed him, we might because people are afraid of Q tags on DraftKings. We're now getting 11 pick value on Chris Godwin. So just a little draft thing to try. Sometimes it won't work out, but in this room, we now got tremendous value at receiver. We went 5 receivers in a row after starting Bijan Robinson and Bucky Irving. So Bijan and Bucky's started RB. We've got Marvin Harrison, Ted McMillan, Devontae Smith, Juwan Jennings, Chris Godwin. So we've got shares of potential very high-scoring offenses here with Jennings, Godwin, Devontae. Bucky as well. We're going to be Tampa Bay, one of the teams with higher implied totals than some others out there. So I'm liking the start. I think we've got a good thing to build off of here as long as we just avoid the QB sniping that on DraftKings can be a little bit hard to navigate from time to time. Let's go to the draft board view. Let's line this up. How do you feel about James Cook and Breece Hall? Seem to have one or the other in half my team so far. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of either. James Cook, I just think you'll be able to get him cheaper during the summer when that holdout drags on. They're not going to pay him as much money as he wants. He started initially wanting $13 million a year, which would have been a lot. We're talking about Saquon's previous deal before the Eagles upped him up a little bit more following the Super Bowl. But like for James Cook, he wants that much money. Then he upped it after a season. He wanted $15 million, the latest reports. He's not going to get paid $15 million, especially this team as well has really good leverage against him with Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. They've also been proven to get production off the literal scrap heap with guys like Latavius Murray before. Damian Harris, they tried to. Maybe they would have if he were healthy. Point being is like it's a team that's willing to do that. So I don't think James Cook has good leverage. I think throughout the summer, James Cook's going to come down to pick 50 or so. So he's not one of my favorite clicks. Breece Hall as well, not one of my favorite clicks either. It came out again recently, and it was talked about before. Aaron Glenn had said similar things earlier in the offseason. They want to have a timeshare at RB. So Breece Hall's mispriced given the fact that Braylon Allen will be in the mix. Isaiah Davis will also be in the mix for those scat back kind of touches. You kind of like Ty Johnson gets for Buffalo. So not preferred picks. I think they're still viable, for guys like James Cook who'll be there eventually, but you're paying a premium for a guy who's probably to be cheaper throughout the summer, which is not usually the way. I try to draft things for myself too often. All right, we're on the clock here. We've got Kyler. We could solve some QB issues if we want to do that. Could also add another RB. But I think taking Kyler here feels pretty good. Just kind of closing the loop on QB, knowing that DraftKings gets very frothy in QB from pick 90, pick 85, you could even say, to pick 120, 130. It just ends up being a QB frenzy where everybody's taking multiple, sometimes 2, 3 QBs in those areas. I'm sure some rooms out there, people take 4. So for me, getting Kyler Murray here, hopefully he runs a little bit more this year after not running as much last year. They've talked a little bit about that in some of the coach speak out there. Gannon wants him to run more. Kyler said he's going to run more. We'll see if it happens in practice because sometimes once guys stop running, they don't start running again. We got pick 101 coming up. So the team so far is a 1-2-5-0. We've got Kyler Murray, Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, at receiver Marvin Harrison, Ted McMillan, Devontae Smith, Juwan Jennings, and Chris Godwin here is a really nice value. I'm still a believer in Chris Godwin. For Chris Godwin, your big concern is just that the ankle injury for him. He's not out there being full go yet, which was seemingly a thing that was almost a certainty based on when they talked about it earlier. And the fact that they gave him like $50 million in a new deal of guaranteed money. You would think that the ankle's good to go for the most part. But I think that for Chris Godwin, I'm willing to take on the risk with him being a 10-pick discount. If he's not ready to go in OTAs in May and June, I'm not going to sweat that. If he's not good to go in July, I'll feel a little bit bad about the exposure, and Godwin could fall quite a bit. It seems like the public likes Mika Egbuka a lot, the rookie coming in, who I think is your number one slot potential handcuff, let's say, for Chris Godwin's role if he can't get there. But I like Godwin a lot. If I'm going to get him at pick 77, I would probably take that click. I would say, honestly, every time. Him ahead of Cooper Kupp, I think is great. Like Godwin's one of the best receivers in football last year. Obviously, it's a little bit more hurt than we want to see. I do like Justin Fields a click in general, but I'm not sure he's a fit for this team. We got Purdy. Could get him. But also start with tight end. This is a tough spot for me. I am going to go Purdy here. I feel like just getting QB done is appealing to me because it is really stressful on DraftKings that I find myself getting boxed out a lot because I naturally, as many players do who've done a lot of drafts, like you try to push QB more and squeeze that value out of a room, especially if you're in a sharp room where other players tend to stay in their lanes more. Some of the streamer rooms out there, like Pete Overs at stream rooms, Underdog, you see people a lot kind of take their QB, take the wide receiver. They don't really compete as much for stacks quite as often. In this room, I don't trust it at all. So got our 2 QBs out of the way with Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy. They have different bye weeks as well, so we don't need to take a third unless we really want to. Need to make it up a tight end. Still need to get more RBs in, but with a Bucky Bijan start, those guys should make a lineup, I would say, almost every week would be the hope. So feeling okay about the start so far. Thinking Justin Fields will help Breece a lot more than A-Rod. I would ask, what would be the logic thinking it would help more? Why would a QB who takes rushes away in the red zone help Breece a lot more? For RPO stuff, he'll probably have more effective runs, but a lot of what Breece had in terms of the highest upside games are having that check down bullshit stuff. where he would get 10 targets in games sometimes. Obviously, he'd have the occasional 50-yard CD run that would make his day as well. But Brees last year, I mean, the targets per game were at, let's see, you have 5 targets a game. You're talking more than a guy like Jalen McMillan gets overall as a role. And he's an actual receiver. So, like, that's a big part of the game. Brees last year also, I mean, the previous regime didn't really trust him in the red zone the way you'd want a bell cow back to be. 1.4 intended red zone rushes a game, 0.6 red zone targets a game for comparison. Kyron Williams gets 4.4. Joe Mixon gets 4.1 red zone rushes. And they also get the same amount of targets. I just don't think Brees was treated that way by the previous regime. He certainly could, fall into a new role so far. There's nothing the coaches have said that indicates like, oh, we want to give the ball to Brees Hall a bunch. And in fact, he did try to trade him. So, like, you like who you like. That's the thing in best ball. Things can also hit. Brees Hall's proven he has a ceiling, but like, I don't think that price tag's right for him. He should be going, in my opinion. Brees Hall in this room went where? Pick 37. I think he should be more in this James Cook, Hampton, Harvey range. I mean, what's functionally the difference between James Cook and Brees Hall? I mean, James Cook's got a better offense. But that's my opinions on it. Obviously, people are entitled to feel differently. We got Charbonnet. We got ATN here. ATN, some recent reports from Liam Cohen giving quotes saying that he doesn't want to ship him out of town, which is not a surprise, but sometimes people need to hear that confirmation. Zach Charbonnet I like taking because Kenneth Walker is one of my favorite RB picks. Charbonnet, really with his work, kind of earned his way into a role last year. So I'm going to go Charbonnet here. You're trying to add a little more depth at RB, even though I do expect Bijan and Bucky to make our team way more often than not. If we get to a spot where Walker gets hurt and Charbonnet takes over again, I think there's a good chance we could see Bijan, Bucky, and Charbonnet make lineups when we actually need it in the playoffs. So I'm going to take Charbonnet here and hope that flushes out the RB room. Do you like getting increased exposure to the Davises, Isaiah Ray of the world, or Ty Johnson? I do like the concept of Ty Johnson very late as like your RB6. I think that's not a bad click. Isaiah Davis, I don't take very much of. I just think that he hurts the equation enough there as kind of your scat back that offers something different. Braylon Allen is the one I like taking the most out of the Jets backfield because he's basically free. On Underdog, he's got like a 170 ADP. I think it's come up a little bit. On DraftKings here, 171.6. He was a good plus EPA per target guy last year, which surprises me given the fact he's mostly just a big bruiser type. But his EPA per rush was very similar to Brees Hall. Brees put up negative 0.09 EPA per rush. Braylon Allen put up negative 0.05. But Braylon Allen had a 0.14 EPA per target, whereas Brees was at negative 0.03. It's not everything, but like point being, these guys were very similar players in the offense last year. The avoided tackle rate also pretty similar. Brees Hall was at 12% and change. Braylon Allen was at 11% rounded up. So these guys to me played very similarly. There's nothing that made me think one's better than the other. That tends to be how I try to play that the following year. We got Loveland here, who I think is an okay tight end pick. We have some Niners correlation going, and I think we're going to do that. We have Brock Purdy stacked up. We'll take Loveland on the way back for our Niners Chicago Week 17 game. So Colston, Loveland, a little bit of an ADP discount there as well at pick 125. But Loveland, the big concern is really that tight ends year one does tend to be hard for them to hit their upside unless you're a Brock Bowers generational kind of talent. And I would say Loveland, really not that guy. His numbers at Michigan stood out to me because he's targeted a ton at Michigan, had a 40% target route run rate, which you don't see numbers like that even for your star receivers at shitty schools. So him to get targeted that much definitely meant something, but it also was like he wasn't the most efficient getting that targets. It was kind of a will thing as opposed to a skill thing, which is what I try to look at when I compare college numbers to what I've looked at for the last few years for all these guys. I think that for Loveland, he's a nice pick to make. So the thing though is like I really don't trust his college numbers. Like there's no way he's going to earn anywhere near that target share when you're competing with DJ Moore and you're competing with Romo Dunze. For as much as Luther Burden's not a great target earner either, they're probably going to find ways to get the ball in his hands because he's going to be really great after the catch, avoiding tackles and creating yards after the catch. But I think that opens up a guy like Loveland to have 2 touchdown games and be a guy who can move the sticks occasionally. So I'll take the shot at Loveland here. Definitely feels like with him though, we've got to go 3 tight ends, but not a surprise to be doing that in a 20-round draft anyway. Bucky Bijan is a nice combo. Thank you, Bree. I appreciate that. Of course, Bree, a long-time watcher of the show and glad to see him back hanging out. Team is slapping. I agree. Again, I really do think like you get Bijan and Bucky early. It just gives you the ability to be more flexible with your team overall because you have 2 guys who are going to make your roster. So again, the wide receiver pocket here aligns pretty well. And there are some other combos I could have hit where like I could have maybe gotten a Garrett Wilson, Could have maybe gotten a Cortland Sutton or a Xavier Worthy. Could have gotten a JMO, who I like a lot. The coaches have talked about a ton so far in a positive way in Detroit. Travis Hunter, we could have gotten it as well. He's actually a pretty nice value for this guy at 52. I think the spot here, I don't know that you can't in best ball just say like, oh, this will win. This combo is going to win, because literally whatever comes together late. Last year, nobody would have thought T. Higgins would win people all the money. And in reality, it made a lot of sense when it happened, because number one, he actually wasn't a key part of teams advancing because he had missed so much time. So you kind of had to survive without him. But then when he spiked, he took, targets away, took touchdowns away, took, overall volume away from one of the highest owned, highest advanced rate players in Jamar Chase. That's sort of how best ball works. But I do feel like, out of teams I've built, the ones that feel the most sturdy to me are Saquon, Bucky, Bijan, Bucky teams. And maybe that's true of two RBs anywhere, but I think in particular, when you're picking in the 3, 4, 5 hole, you get a lot of better receivers coming back to you to kind of build that team around. So I'm happy with the team. I really like this build a lot. Around the clock here, you've got a 2, 3, 5, 1. Tucker Kraft here is a little bit of a discount. I do like Tucker Kraft. Would like him more if we had any Baltimore stuff going. Frankly, we are just trying to get better at receiver. I think Rachaad White not a click. I think Garendo is a click for me. I'm going to go Garendo. We've got a little Niners-Chicago correlation. I'm still not totally sold that Christian McCaffrey ends up getting the workload of all workloads, given the fact that, the team, even though their Super Bowl window might be closed, that's probably what they're playing for still. And I think at that point, you're not going to push Christian McCaffrey incredibly hard when you have a guy who proved himself well in Garendo last year. You still have, guys are bringing in this year, rookie Jordan James from Oregon. Looks like a poor man's Bucky in some of his college stats. Not as good of an avoided tackle rate guy, but got kind of similar results overall. He could be a guy that factors in a little bit. But I like Garendo. I thought Garendo flashed pretty well last year, even though it's another guy too, where we talk about this sometimes of the show. And in general content I do. Garendo really fast, really a great athlete with his RAS testing before he came out. I was one of the best athletes to ever come out at running back and one of the fastest as well, but only 11% avoided tackle rate. So not super shifty in the way you want to have at RB to feel like he's a can't miss prospect. But still, put up a 0.02 EPA per rush, 0.33 EPA per target. Positive numbers for both are both positive things. So I like Garendo. And I don't think it's crazy. Wasn't probably the most counterintuitive thing to say. And positive numbers in both are positive things. Yes, that shouldn't surprise you too much. All right, we're coming up here. Let's see what Sam Hordinsky does. Thank you, dog. My dog has gained 9 pounds in 3 weeks between vet visits, which is a crazy thing for a puppy, but that's she's going to be enormous, apparently. Going to be Clifford, the big black dog. We got 2, 4, 5, 1. Need to get back to receiver at some point. But I do want to get that second tight end. I like Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, I think some risk for sure with the foot injury he's got right now. The fact the team has talked about trading him, though apparently people are not willing to go to a second round pick for him, which makes sense. But Kyle Pitts, the biggest thing that'll benefit him is that Michael Penix, and this is, I think, an athletic point that I saw recently in their articles, and that's really another thing I'd recommend for you best ball people out there if you're drafting teams all summer, reading The Athletic every day. One of the most important parts of your football knowledge accumulation. That's a really big overall part of the picture. It's like projections in NFL DFS on a weekly basis. Your news and being able to cipher through that news or decipher that news, sift through, it's probably a better way to say it. That's one of the best skills to have in best balls. It's one thing to keep in mind with that overall. But basically, for the situation overall with Kyle Pitts, I think the main thing for him is that getting a vertical passer like Michael Penix is something he really hasn't had in his career, which is what The Athletic was talking about. And it could be a game changer for a guy who's still been pretty decent, even though I know people wanted him to be, basically be Travis Kelce day one. Still talking about a guy that had a 0.1 EPA per target last year. 18% target per run is not great. But 0.7 red zone targets a game, 0.4 deep targets a game. Like, he can be better. I think there's still a world where he's good enough. I like him more when you have the Rams, because then you get the shot at your Rams Atlanta week 17. That should be one of the highest scoring games overall. But just getting Pitts as tight end too feels pretty good to me. When best ball tools, the Stochastic, I don't think has any plans for best ball tools this year. Certainly that can change, but I don't think that'll be something you'll see coming. I would assume at some point they'll have their own rankings and projections coming out. For now, you can get mine through the OddsShopper, my OddsShopper Tails package if you want. I have my rankings out there with blurbs for all 300 players overall. I guess is going to be the final goal. Right now, I have about 150 of them blurb, the ones that actually have something I have something to say about. But also my data I look at for that too if you want to check it out. But the Stochastic ones, I don't know when they'll come out. I'd presume at some point, though, probably after NBA season, would be my guess, if they're going to do that. But unfortunately, I'm not in the loop on that stuff. I just show up here, try to talk to you guys about DraftKings, try to give you guys the best takes I can from having had, success in best ball in particular, won 5 figures last year in best ball, and it probably could have gone a little bit better, given the players I had the biggest stands on, Jaden Daniels, Bucky Irving, unfortunately also Marshawn Lloyd. But basically for best ball, really tools matter, I think, if you are new to it. If you pay enough attention, you learn to do it the right way. You read your best ball manifesto kind of articles. If you want to search that on Google, you'll get a pretty good read about how to play best ball the right way. And you should hopefully get where you want to go as long as you kind of follow the core stuff we talk about. 2-4-5-2 build is where we're at. Need to add more at receiver. I like Romeo Doubs. He's been targeted a ton in camp. I think people are worried about the ambiguous wide receiver core there. When you add in Matthew Golden, who's certainly incredibly fast, but was a dog shit targeter at Texas last year. I think that for me, Romeo Doubs, a player that has previously practiced with Jordan Love in the off seasons, guy who's also been good as an outside receiver when they've asked him to, and a guy who also fought for his role last year when he had that little suspension for a game because he wasn't happy with his target share. I think that spoke to Romeo Doubs, and he came back in and got the work, and that spoke to the relationship that they kind of have there with him, as your outside receiver. So Doubs to me here at pick 164. I think he and Josh Palmer, two guys I feel really strongly about, a little bit too cheap. And Palmer's come up about 20 spots, some of the other sites out there. Doubs is not, but I think those two guys in this range, very nice clicks. Leggett, not a bad click either. Jack Besh fell in this room. Jack Besh, I like the profile for him coming out of TCU. Is a very high efficiency player, not a crazy target earner. But with Jacoby Myers there, with Brock Bowers there, with Genty there, I'm not sure what's left for a guy like Jack Besh. So him going a little bit cheaper would be nice to see. I think he feels a lot more like a Wandale to me, but less targets, more ADOT would be my guess. More air yards. Inside intel, JMO. What inside intel? I mean, I think he's good. The coaches have not given a lot of inside intel. They're talking about him every time out. He's stronger this year. He's faster. I did it a bit as my spot on one of my splash play streams recently, but they're talking him up like he's smarter, he's faster, he's stronger. Like he's the most improved version of himself. We'll see. But definitely they're hyping him up quite a bit. We've got a 2-4-6-2 build here. We want to keep adding more at receiver. I like Jalen McMillan as a little free, cheap target. Not much in terms of correlation with Tampa Bay playing Miami in week 17. But you know what? 18-pick discount on McMillan. I can just absorb that and be perfectly happy with it. So Jalen McMillan here, wide receiver 7. Would have been happy to take Rico Dowdle, Braylon Allen here, less so Kareem Hunt. I think that Eli Mitchell coming to that team is not great news for Kareem Hunt's overall opportunity. Pacheco, I think, is also probably mostly dead, but he is gaining weight to try to prove that he should get the roll back. I don't know if that's going to help him out. But for Kareem Hunt, he just really wasn't that great last year. Kind of got the volume to say nobody else to give the ball to. I think this year they're going to have other guys to give the ball to. So I'm not crazy about Kareem Hunt here when you have, I think, legit upside with Rico Dowdle is getting paid exactly what Chuba Hubbard's getting paid, basically. Braylon Allen, who played, again, arguably better than Breece Hall, if not very close to 1-to-1 with Breece Hall last year. I think this is a good range to pick up your RB5, RB6. Like the spot a good amount. Guys, remember to download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. Of course, we're only doing these streams on Stochastic thanks to DraftKings, so check them out. And the big thing on there is you're drafting your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million. When you do that for the first time, you get a second share for free. And they also have some new deals coming up as well on top of that, where if you get in a bunch of entries, they're giving you away free tickets right now, I believe, is the deal they have going on. So check it out on DraftKings. Again, 2 shots to play for $15 million, and it's $2 million up top. So more money you get if you won one of the Million Makers in season. That's what you get when you're playing best ball. And really the big thing there, again, ADP, very important when you're building your teams. Be mindful of where guys are going normally. Try to soak up value if you can. Stacking and correlating. QB stack up with receivers, tight ends, even RBs. Try to capture what an offense looks like when they beat out their overall projection over the course of a season. And then expected value being paid out in week 17. That $15 million prize pool. Yeah, some of that is going to be advanced rate stuff with people just who move on to week 15. But you want to be there in the finals. You want a shot to win the big money because that's when you realize enough money to pay for everything else you want to do gambling-wise. And hopefully you actually take some money for yourself. I think if you win $2 million, you could probably gamble a lot and also still change your life would be my guess. So check it out for yourself. DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. Great site, and the tournament this year and the deals they have going around it, I think really do speak to their commitment to having a better best ball product this year, which I'm very happy to see, to be honest. The more competition, the better. Okay. So we got Keenan Allen going here as a free agent. Still think he's a nice click as well to round out your receiver rooms. Think he's going to go somewhere at some point. I just think he doesn't want to do the work of being in OTAs, which makes sense as a vet. Receiver goes down, Keenan Allen hopping in there. He could end up with tremendous closing line value in terms of where he's getting drafted right now. But you absorb the risk that he could be a Will Fuller and never play again. I just don't think that's the most likely, given the fact he was analytically the best receiver in Chicago's room last year. We're on the clock here. A lot of RBs. I don't really need an RB5, but I do think if I'm going to take one, Justice Hill feels pretty good to me. Keaton Mitchell's apparently feeling good about his health after the knee injury knocked him out a couple years ago, and he really hit the world ablaze initially. Did not do the same when he came back this year. Keaton Mitchell says he feels better than he ever has. I'm not sold on that, and Justice Hill's really the Ravens added nothing to that backfield. So Justice Hill getting the game scripts, third and long situations, being trusted in those, going to be a positive. Playing from behind, he'll be on the field for that as well. And Henry, another year of miles on the tires where he got a ton of volume. I think Henry's a great click as well. I think he played really well, good plus EPA guy in the run of the pass, which at his volume is hard to do. At his age, even harder to do. And his avoided tackle rate was like almost 20% too. Like Derrick Henry was fantastic last year. So don't take me liking Justice Hill as an indoctrination of him. But I think when you get in game scripts where Baltimore's down, where you're not able to solve the game away early with Henry, or just the game is so far ahead that it's like Justice Hill comes in, I think Hill pays off a lot this year, would be my guess. And a PPR too. I think he makes lineups more than you realize. And the flex at the very least. But, as part of a room is the goal. This draft is flying by here in round 17. I get paid for an hour. But I can't extend it more than that. We can't do 2 drafts. That'd be crazy. That'd be ludicrous. All right, Roshan Johnson goes. Your pivot to DeAndre Swift in that Chicago backfield, where they also added nobody of note. 2572. Not loving receiver at this point. Michael Wilson already went. Yeah. I'm going to take Darius Slayton here. Think he's a decent click at this point. One adds more receiver depth, and at this point, there's really no values left. I don't mind Schultz and Ford, but I don't mind Ford. Schultz, really, I hated as a player, but a good amount of last year. Really, just think with Houston's offense, just don't think he's meaningfully involved. They keep adding younger tight ends in that feel like they're designed to take Schultz's role away. If you get points per blocking snap, I think Dalton Schultz might be a better play. But I think adding receiver in here with Slayton, making it a little bit deeper, feels pretty good. So 2582 build. We've still got 3 rounds left, 3 picks left. So there we go. All right, and let's scroll down so you can see the board while we wait for my next pick in 10. I'd like to heed your advice on stacking Week 17 matchups. Ended up with Dolphins, with Tua, Tyreek, and Achane, and Lions, Goff, Amon-Ra, Jameson, with some lesser run backs, Godwin, Naughton, no Vikes, though. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You can't always do it. Certainly, you don't want to go reaching around, getting too crazy, and taking guys 20 picks out of ADP just to get a Week 17 correlation. That's the way you kind of undo the good of what Week 17 correlation is. But I think really it's one thing where people miss it a lot, because there's 2 things that are positive for Week 17 correlation. Number one is if you make the finals, you have the shot at hitting that nut outcome where one game goes for 70 points, nothing else comes close. You have that being a thing, and it has happened before. It didn't happen last year. There were a ton of games that went nuclear last year, and players as well in different spots that went nuclear. But in general, having that shot at that upside game is really the main thing you're looking for. The other part is that it allows you to organize your teams a little bit more, where let's say you have Tampa Bay and Miami, and they both excel this year. And I'm not sold on Miami, but I think they're a good example because I love Tampa Bay's offense. If Miami's also good and you get some of the best parts of Miami, or just even outlier ones late, like a Nick Westbrook-Akine, if he comes in and snatches a bunch of touchdowns, maybe Tyreek Hill moves on, and Waddle and Westbrook-Akine end up being the stack you need. You end up then kind of filing your teams in a way where it's like, oh, cool, here's my Tampa Bay and Miami team. Here's my Rams and Atlanta team. Here's my Washington and Dallas team. So you kind of have it so these guys are all organized for yourself. If you're playing 150 lineups, I think that's where the Week 17 correlation shines through more. So it's just like a natural process, kind of like a Dewey Decimal System of how your lineups come together. So that's another benefit as well of correlation. But really the big thing is just giving yourself the shot to have the money when the money's there. Week 17 is all it comes down to. And it's tough. When you don't have the nuts player, I didn't have T Higgins at all. And I would say over the course of a season, that was a pretty right bet. But then once the entire picture comes together, it's like, oh yeah, I see how T. Higgins could win somebody millions of dollars because you like basically couldn't use him during the regular season for 6 weeks out of the year. But he was getting targeted as much as Jamar Chase. He gave you great leverage against Chase late, and he ends up spiking hugely as a result. All right, so we have a 2-5-8-2 here. I think at this point, we're just scooping some players that I find interesting. I do like Juwan Johnson, but I'd rather keep adding a little bit more at receiver because I think, again, I feel really good at RB. So I'm going to go Diami Brown here. Diami Brown has some positive camp buzz. He was also the first signing of this new Liam Cohen Jags regime coming in. So that's something that also I think carries some water. Usually the situation with NFL coaches is they make a signing. They want that signing to look good. So that signing gets every opportunity to succeed. Sometimes that means more red zone work. Sometimes that means more opportunity overall. Sometimes that means getting on the field over a guy like Parker Washington, who probably deserves to play, given the fact he's played about as well as Christian Kirk has the last couple of years. But I don't think he will play as much as a Diami Brown based on the early camp stuff so far and just the fact that they're paying Diami real money. So Diami Brown, to me, I think a strong click here in round 18. If you get him in 19 or 20, even better. And thank you for the compliment here, Wookiees. I appreciate it. And glad to hear all you guys. Again, a lot of you guys might be new to best ball. I'm going to do the best I can to give you guys good info about stuff as we go. And again, you'll hear my player takes as well. Feel free to follow them or fade them. I do think player analysis is one of my strongest parts throughout my draft process and in general as a content creator. But for you guys out there, just try to, in general, even if you want to throw everything else I say out the window, being aware of ADPs, being aware of stacking and correlating, and being aware of expected value in week 17. Those are your big rules of thumb. If you take 5 RBs to start, then you probably need a rule about draft capital buckets and being aware of that. But you'll still do probably decently enough as long as those kind of core things. All right, we got a 2-5-9-2 build here. I think adding more at tight end feels pretty logical to me. We don't have anybody at tight end we want to take, though, that stacks up. Higbee, I liked, commanded a lot of targets down the stretch. Theo Johnson being an outlier this year seems like a possibility given the fact I think the Giants are going to be better no matter who they have at QB. Likely Russell Wilson to start. If Wilson gets hurt or is ineffective, you see Jameis Winston at some point. And I think they close the year with Jackson Dart to save everybody's jobs. Is going to be my guess how the season goes. But no matter what you get there, you get kind of an improvement at QB. And this way, we're also doing a thing that I think is really important as well that people sometimes miss in best ball. Like stacking with your QB, great. But sometimes just taking a stack without the QB can work because like for a situation like the Giants, I don't know who I feel like will start week 17. I think it'll be Jackson Dart. There's a chance they could be, 9-8 rolling into the final, the final couple weeks. And then Russell Wilson's the guy who's maybe gotten them close to the playoffs. Maybe they can make it as a wild card. So it's possible you get Wilson there. And then you frankly could end up with a situation that Wilson gets hurt like he did a lot last year. And then Jameis comes in and he's your one that's trying to win the team into the playoffs in week 17. That can happen. So in that case, like you could take Neighbors, you could take Slayton, you could take Theo Johnson, you could take Wandale, but you might not want the QB, especially if you have good enough QBs. And I feel pretty good about the Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray combo up top. So mini stacking without the QB, definitely a powerful thing to do, even if you probably don't want to do it with early ADP guys quite as much. Like if you're taking Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you probably want Joe Burrow if you can get him. Obviously, you're going to get sniped in that particular situation a lot in a lot of the draft rooms out there. That's just one general rule of thumb for me. Is mini stacking good, especially when the QB is not particularly good. And guys, feels like we're making good time here. So we're going to be wrapping up with pick 20 coming up. But I'm going to be doing another PPR draft, different platform drafters. So will be that one I'll be doing after the stream. Of course, I think an important part of best ball is getting yourself looks on different sites because A, they all have different players. Number one, B, your luck can run good on one site, not as well on another. The ADPs are also going to be different on each site as well. So there are little bits of an advantage sometimes on things like that. But check me out on @SplashPlayPod after this one. And on that channel, I do DraftKings drafts, do drafters drafts, do underdog drafts. Here on Stochastic, though, DraftKings doing a great job promoting the channel. And also, giving you guys a shot at 15 mils were the big thing. The prize pool is huge this year. $2 million up top is great to see. 100K to the top 10 finishers at the very minimum. Also great to see. Even if you finish second, you're winning $1 million. So that's really DraftKings best ball, what they have to offer you in addition to all the free entries they give away during their happy hour deals and the fact that if you sign up for one entry for $20, you get a second one free right away. So check it out on DraftKings. Again, they're doing a great job and really happy to see them making improvements every year. It's really all you can ask as a best ball customer for sure. Check out my channel @SplashPlayPod if you can. It's in the chat right now. We'll make our last pick here. We'll do a team review. And if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat too, because I'm happy to go a few more minutes long. I don't want to rip people off. I also don't really have anything to extend for 15 minutes. All right. Last pick here. So we have a 2-5-9-3 Again, 20-round draft. We could add another receiver. That'd be fine. Could add another tight end on. That'd be fine. Blake Corum is free, and I do think he is still a viable click. I am not a Blake Corum fan. I hated him as a rookie coming in, thought his ADP was awful. He's getting taken to the 120s, 130s for a large part of the draft cycle because people want Kyren Williams to not be good for some reason. And I think the pick's not good this year either because Kyren Williams is apparently going to get an extension pretty soon from the Rams. But that said, for Blake Corum, he's free in a draft. We can make the contingent value bet there. I don't think Jarquez Hunter is safely going to be ahead of Blake Corum. I think they do different things as players. Hunter's got a little more avoided tackle ability, a little more shiftiness. Definitely, I'd say some more speed as well. But Corum's probably more reliable between the tackles runner. I think a probably more reliable goal line runner. So Corum not dead here, even though that was to me just like a pure luxury click. But who else here do you really want? I think it'd be how that looks. How many RBs did the guy on your right end up with? Let's see. Let's stay here. Guy in this spot with his Gibbs, Taylor Brown start. Either went Burrow, Metcalf, Debo, deviated again for QB, again for tight ends. So his QB room, his wide receiver room is not good. He tried to make it up. He still took 5 more RBs. He took 8 RBs in total. So yeah, not how you want to handle a spot. Again, no shade. Like people are going to draft different ways, but really this is probably not the most plus EV approach to not have good enough receivers, to have random unstacked QBs. You don't want to balance your draft capital like this. RBs and wide receivers, equally important in your draft capital buckets up top. It's probably not the way to do it for that guy, but more power to him, I guess. No questions, but I was selected to work a state championship game in Round Rock on Thursday. My year-long goal has finally come circle. Hey, there you go. Year-long goal is always a good thing to see. If you guys out there, make your own year-long goals in best ball right now by hopping over to DraftKings, download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app, and draft your $20 best ball lineup to win a shot at your share of $15 million. When you do that, you get your second entry for free for $15 million, another shot at $15 million as well. So that's 2 chances to win big without ever setting a lineup. That's the goal on really here, to play fantasy football without having to deal with your annoying office mates or high school friends that don't really want to play in the tournaments or don't want to play rather in your league anymore. Here, you just get the shot at money, you get to build your team, get the same itch scratched without having to deal with it. So it's a fun thing to do. I've dedicated a lot of my time the last few years to doing it, had good results with it as well. I think you guys will too if you bring your DFS principles that you've gotten from years here on the Stochastic channel. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button down below. Check me out on the @SplashPlay Pod channel. Right after this, I'll link it one more time. I do another draft on there, and of course, doing a ton of drafts on that channel across every site if you want to hang out with me there. But I'll see you guys again soon. Stay tuned. You got MLB Live Before Lock coming up later today. Of course, NBA not coming back till Thursday, but lots of good shows coming up on the Stochastic channel to make you good at MLB. And MLB on DraftKings, $5 tournament today with $50K up top. So might be good to hop in there as well. I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck, and see you hopefully on the next stream on the @SplashPlay Pod channel. Bye. I have to sit